Magnus Carlsen makes his way to the playing hall. It's the first day of Norway Chess 2026 and it's happening in Magnus's hometown in Oslo, Norway. And Magnus has to just put a sign on his chair so that it becomes his chair for the rest of the event. And there you see him putting in his initials and Magnus Carlsen there.
Perfect, thank you. We continue.
And his opponent for round 1 is none other than Alireza Firouzja, who suffered a small injury, or you can say not a small one, but rather a big one at the Grand Chess Tour in Bucharest, Romania, because of which he can no longer walk and has to come to the board in a wheelchair. And here you can see he sits down on the chair, and there's another chair which is kept next to him where he has to keep his leg in this specific angle, otherwise it won't really help him recover. So in this uncomfortable situation as well, Alireza has decided to play this tournament, which is incredible. And this is great fighting spirit. In fact, he would have also continued the tournament in Bucharest, Romania, but I think at that point his health was just too bad. But he got some rest in the next few days, and here he is, and you can see there Divya just looking over her chair, and Magnus enters in. Handshake with Alireza. We have the guest of honor there who's going to make the first move. 2 hours is the time control with no increment, and only increment starts after 40th move, but that too 10 seconds. So very fighting time control, something that can induce mistakes in players. And the thing to note is that Alireza Firouzja has never beaten Magnus Carlsen in a classical game of chess. So this is actually something that Alireza would like to do in Norway Chess. Pawn to c4 is the move made by the guest there. We have more boards, more guests on the other boards. And so as everyone makes their moves, the games will start very soon. All right, so the players are ready. And the first move has been made on all the boards. Alireza gets back his pawn. Will he manage to fight against Magnus Carlsen in his current state of health? A handshake, and let's go. Firouzja with the white pieces opens with pawn to d4. And Magnus Carlsen, well, what is his first move going to be? He goes pawn to d5, d4, d5. And we have the Queen's Gambit with c4 maybe. Or will it be the London system with bishop f4? He goes pawn to c4. And now e6, I guess, is the most natural move. D takes c4 is Queen's Gambit accepted. He goes Queen's Gambit declined. Knight comes out to f3. And Magnus brings his knight to f6. All very standard stuff. Firouzja has a choice between Catalan or knight c3. He goes knight to c3. And now bishop e7, c6, knight d7, bishop b4. So many different possibilities, but Magnus goes for h6, which is a hyper modern way to play this position, stopping bishop g5 ideas. a3 is Firouzja's move, both making little moves, rook moves in the corner of the board. Back in the day, I think the coaches would say never make these pawn moves, they are not helpful. But modern chess is now very, very open to these ideas. c5 played. And now Firouzja takes on d5. I think for Magnus, it's an option between taking on d4, or capturing back on d5. He takes back on the d5 square. And now Alireza can play this move bishop f4, putting his bishop on a good square and then playing e3 and getting his other bishop out. Magnus brings his knight out to c6. And e3 seems very logical. Just bolstering the center. Yes, he plays it. Pawn to e3, opening up the bishop here. And now Magnus goes a6. So he's pushed the pawn one step ahead, stopping bishop b5. Maybe later can play c4 and b5. Bishop comes to e2 for Alireza. And it's a fresh, interesting position, I must say. Now Magnus can get his bishop out to e7 or bishop e6, but he goes pawn to c4, grabbing space and asking Alireza that what's your plan now, because I have a clear-cut plan. b5, rook b8, a5, b4. I'm going to expand on the queen side. Knight jumps into e5 for Firouzja. And clearly you can't take here because de and then d5 is hanging. The other idea is to take and play b3. Magnus goes bishop d6. And now Alireza can do this plan that we were talking about. Take and play b3 and play this position, which looks like a pleasant one for him. But he castles here, which is interesting. And I think Magnus will also castle. He also short castles here. And now this move, bishop g3 and f4 plan. That's actually quite an interesting plan. And Alireza, who has 1 hour 51 minutes, 40 minutes more than Magnus, takes good 10 minutes for this move and plays it. This move is strong on two accounts. One is f4. The other is that the bishop can pop out to h4 and pin the knight on f6. Magnus gets his bishop to f5. He is saying that if you play f4, the e4 square will be weakened, and I'm happy to jump into it with my bishop and the knight. f4 played. Now if you play knight e4, then knight takes d5 is hanging. So you can't jump straight away. Bishop goes back to e7, defending the pawn, preparing knight e4. And bishop f3, a very good move. And Magnus now goes rook to c8. Because if you played knight e4, I can take here and then take the pawn, and I'm simply a pawn up. So rook c8 actually defends this. Rook comes to c1. And now you can even play the move b5, gaining space on the queen side. And Magnus plays it, pawn to b5. You can see that only one pair of pawns have been traded in 15 moves. Bishop comes back to e1 for Firouzja. He may be preparing the g pawn to launch ahead. Pawn to b4. Magnus does not have any patience to build up now with a5, b4. He simply plays b4. Pawn takes pawn and bishop takes b4. You can also, by the way, take with the knight, I think. Knight can come into d3. But he takes with the bishop. And now Alireza goes bishop h4. He pins here and he's threatening takes, queen takes, and knight takes d5. So maybe Magnus chops off. Yeah, he chops off the knight on c3. You can take with the rook, but I guess b takes c3 makes more sense. Otherwise, the b2 pawn is weak. So b takes c3 taken. The pressure on d5 has reduced a bit. Queen d6 played. And here, if you take bishop f6, I'll take with the g pawn, forcing you to take a decision with the knight. And so Alireza goes against it. He doesn't take on f6. Maybe a smart move. He goes rook a1. Knight jumps into e4. Look at the time on the clock. Magnus has 17 minutes. Alireza has 21 minutes. We are on move 20. So 20 more moves to make before the time control sets in. Like 10-second increment. Rook a6. Taken here. f6. Kicking the knight away. I think Magnus basically has understood that in spite of whatever position he has, even though he's a pawn down, his pieces are much better. Look at this bishop. It's amazing. And Alireza is in fact the one who's trying to equalize here. Maybe rook a8 would be a nice move. This bishop is brilliant. He goes queen d7, eyeing the knight, coming out of the spin. And maybe next knight e7, knight f5 could be a plan. Okay, he goes knight f2. He wants to take on e4. So Magnus, wow, he goes knight e7. That's really bold because he's ready to give up this knight e4, d4. But then Magnus sees that he gets the d5 square for his knight. So that's superb understanding for Magnus Carlsen. He goes rook c6, offering a trade of another pair of rooks. Rook takes rook, queen takes rook. And now Firouzja takes on e4. Remember, he's a pawn up. Pawn takes e4. But Magnus has assessed this so beautifully that he is equal. Rook a1. And now simply knight to d5. Yes, the knight is a boss in this position. And bishop e1. Firouzja has only 4 minutes for 11 moves. Magnus has 5 minutes. Rook b8 and f5 played. With f5, you are making way for the queen to attack the pawn on e4. Queen g4 played. And careful now. Maybe knight e7. Defending the pawn. Also defending the g6 square. He goes queen d7. He keeps the knight on d5. And now take on e4. A very nice move. By the way, just to note that if you took here queen g6 check, was a winning move with queen g3 and then double attack. So here queen d7, queen e4, rook e8 played, queen g4 and Magnus goes king g8. A huge mistake and e4 comes forward. Knight jumps into e3 and now this is already game over. Queen f3, knight c2, rook c1. Magnus jumps with his knight but he simply blacked out at this moment. Bishop g3. Knight comes to b5 and Firouzja plays pawn to e5. He has 2 extra pawns. The pawns are rushing down the board and Magnus has nothing. He is also losing on time. He resigns. Alireza Firouzja scores his first classical win against Magnus Carlsen. And the way he did it was after queen takes e4, rook e8, queen g4. He had to find knight e3, queen g6, king g8. And it's possible that Magnus was afraid of rook a7 because if you take the rook, there's queen e8 and the knight drops. But here maybe he didn't have the time to see knight d1 with his own mating threats here. And once this happens, black is in the game with chances. The moment he played king g8, he absolutely forgot that e4 was possible. And then the queen came back and there were 2 extra pawns and Firouzja goes on to win, and what a win this is, that too on a wheelchair.
Yeah, a very difficult game from early on. I kind of severely underestimated his plan of going bishop g3 there. It seems so counterintuitive to move your bishop away to make way for the pawn, but I realized it was pretty dangerous. And then later on, I think there were a lot of somewhat unpleasant choices for him. For me, a little bit more pleasant for him. Yeah, he put me on. Yeah, he gave me a lot of tests, and at the end, I failed him.
By the way you're summarizing, it sounds like you're impressed with Alireza's game today.
No, I think. He doesn't necessarily always find the best move, I think, but he put me under a ton of pressure, and that's kind of what you wanna do.
Good luck tomorrow, Magnus.
Thank you. Det er ikke noe annen utgang, eller?
Kommer du hva slags musikk?
Ikke her. Du må komme ut før du kan begynne andre utfordringer.
Lykke til i morgen.
Can I get a little selfie with you?
Yeah, sure. Very sorry.
It just was too many people. They just got
That happened last year as well.